Welcome everyone, this is Mark from the EricNMark show, and we are here today to talk about an important topic, something that I've been thinking about and talking to Eric about recently. We talked about it the other day, and we decided to make a podcast out of this. Again, if you're liking what we're doing here, which we're hoping that you are, please like and subscribe. The playground rules and antics phenomenon, as we've been talking about in a lot of our podcasts, and what that entails. Somebody in a position of leverage or advantage taking advantage of somebody else. Why does this exist is the question that Eric and I came up with the other night. Why are people like this? You know, we can spread that out to, or expand that to other ideas, such as, why are people in conflict? Why is there a war? That kind of thing. I mean, those are pretty elaborate concepts. It takes us hours to go ahead and expand upon those. But specifically this. What is the need for one person to have to get an advantage over somebody else? Right? Or one entity to get over the advantage over somebody else. Now, or another entity, I should say. So there's a lot of theories about this, and they're not necessarily right or wrong answers. We have come back with a lot of different ideas as to why this is, what happens from, let's say, the dawn of mankind, or the birth of a human being, and what takes place after that point. So we're going to go ahead and share some of those ideas with you, and we'd love to hear from you as well. And we have our email address there in the body of this YouTube page. So let's talk about it now. Eric, to start with. Now, one thing that I talked about was, since the dawn of mankind, I felt like perhaps the reason why people wanted to get an advantage over each other, take advantage of one another, okay, in many cases, is because of limited resources, right? So what would end up happening is that if there was not enough of something, right, throughout history, not enough food or not enough clean drinking water, not enough shelter, basic needs, right? Then down the road, of course, means of trade, not enough gold, or somebody wanted to get to the gold before somebody else did because there's limited supply. I felt like that could be one of the things. Another thing that I thought about was just the natural competition. Man's natural need to want to go ahead and compete with each other, even when we have plenty of what it seems like on the surface, plenty to eat, plenty of drinking water, that kind of thing, we're still competitive with one another. There's lots of theories about this. Those are 2 points to start us off. I'd like to hear your take on it, Eric. What do you think about this?
Yeah, definitely. When people come together in social organizations, there's always a need to establish who's in charge, to get things done the way you want them done. But I can't help but think that there's maybe a little difference in what happens in the playground is there's an absence of true survival, right? So like in a context where in the beginning of mankind, where mankind are social by nature, they had to come together to survive against the elements. They had to establish territory. They had to establish means of procreation. They had to establish a means of protecting their own. But that need is kind of absent on the playground, like at a school or a workplace. And it seems like it's replaced by a need for social protection. And that may be a different instigator, a different set of rules that may take place when occurring on the playground.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, especially with limited resources and that kind of thing, we can understand how that would happen. Now, a point that we were talking about yesterday, and again, I'm talking about it again for the purpose of the podcast today. In a perfect world, if everybody, and this would never happen, of course, unfortunately, but as much as we would might love to idealize it, let's say if we went ahead and everybody had everything split into equal parts. Then that's, again, I don't mean this as a social concept or a political concept. I mean just purely for the sake of a hypothetical, okay? everybody had the same amount of money. Everybody had the same. All the kids had the same amount of toys, same size houses, everything. With all things being equal, right? I would hope that maybe, just maybe, we could gradually go ahead. Maybe over time, maybe it would take a couple of generations. We would get rid of this. If not entirely purge, this type of phenomenon would be in decline. But then I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, that's a little too idealistic, right? But at the same time, I'm like, well, hold on. It comes down to one of several questions, and I'd love to hear your answer on this situation, one of several considerations. If everything was equal between everybody, which again is totally hypothetical, what would be the main underlying issue after that point that the playground continued to exist or continued to thrive as an unfortunate concept or an unfortunate phenomenon? Is it because of the fact that people are innately selfish or greedy or insatiable? Like we're never entirely satisfied? Most of us, we always want more, there's a lot of argument for that if you look around the world. Concepts like greed and everything. Or is it because innately and throughout history and that type of thing, there's been so much competition that we wouldn't know what to do in the absence of that type of competition? We have that need to go ahead and compete with each other and fight with each other to try to get one gold coin more than one other person, or try to get a couple of square feet extra in our house, or a little bit of a better car or something, or maybe it's not even financial at that point, right? Maybe there's something else where we want to be able to have, a bragging rights over somebody else. Like, hey, well, I'm more spiritual than this guy. Yeah, we may have the same amount of money, and we might have the same size house, or cars in similar classes. But I go to church 3 times per week, and he only goes to church, once a month, or only on high holidays. So it kind of makes me wonder. What do you think it is? Is it because of man's nature, like I said, of being the insatiable aspect, perhaps greedy, selfish, that kind of thing, which is kind of a murkier view of mankind? Or is it because we're just so used to being this way for the thousands of years that we've, some people might argue millions, that's not the main point here, depending on what their belief system is. But again, could it be that we've just been doing this for so long that we wouldn't know what to do if we weren't left with any specific shortcomings as far as material needs or similar? What do you think about that?
Well, when it comes to, I guess, human interaction, the first step obviously is there is a true cause, like we talked about or alluded to earlier, where people had to legitimately get together to get things done, to survive. But once you've survived, you're left with kind of a void of, I guess, what you kind of asked, what's next? But what's next is people have agendas. People have things they want to accomplish, and people are kind of selfish. We're in a world that doesn't really have solid mentorship. We're in a world that people are in it for themselves. They've taken spirituality out of things. And so people are left kind of void and kind of struggling for answers and finding ways to control scenarios for their benefit. And so you see that on the playground. You see people trying to struggle for attention, people trying to outshine others, So I guess really in the absence of a real cause, we kind of shift to a social need structure into trying to outshine our partner with, I guess, being the coolest in the environment that we're in.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly what happens. So in a hypothetical sense, I love that you said that. So in a hypothetical sense, let's say that you and I, like I said, had pretty much everything the same. You know what I'm saying? We both would have wonderful wives, wonderful children, wonderful homes, wonderful cars. Both have a some kind of place of worship that we went to, and that type of thing, and we're friends, right? So at some point we say, okay, with all other things being equal, we're like, okay, well, hey, maybe we don't need to go ahead and be envious of the other guy. There's no point of contention. We go ahead and and have kind of a good reciprocal, healthy kind of friendship. But what would end up happening within the context of that is with our competitive nature, my hockey background, your soccer background, and that kind of thing, we'd probably go ahead and do things on a recreational basis. We get together probably to shoot some hoops, right? Maybe play a little bit of basketball or kick a soccer ball around. At some point, that would get competitive. At some point, we go ahead maybe and play some card games. And we want to go ahead and maybe, talk a little trash, as the saying goes, during those card games. Maybe we want to go ahead and shoot some pool together, right? Play some billiards, as they like to call it in many parts of the world. It's like, yeah, well, I'm glad that we're friends. I'm glad that everything that we seem to have seems to be more or less in line with each other, and that's a nice, healthy balance between us. But at the same time, within those other areas, I'm still looking for the competitive edge, right? Or maybe a little bit of bragging rights here and there. It's like, hey, well, on the surface, we're pretty equal, but at the same time, for the moment at least, or for today's barbecue or whatever it is, the get-together that we're having, I've got bragging rights over you. I think that it's that deeply instilled into us. Doesn't mean we want to hurt each other, but I think that maybe it's hard not to like that idea of like saying, hey, you know what? My good buddy Eric or my good buddy Mark, I'm one up on him today. I got the best of him today.
Yeah, so it's like, social media and everything kind of fortifies the philosophy of you have to stand out. You have to be on top of somebody else. Instead of you have to find ways of working with other people. Instead of, why can't you just live day to day and get along, why is there this battle that exists that you have to be above somebody? That may be one of the biggest components of the playground rules, which kind of gives people the illusion that they have to be over somebody instead of just going to school or going to work and fitting in where you fit in and bringing value where you can bring value and just enjoying company instead of trying to be over somebody.
Absolutely. And I think a lot about it is making peace with where we're at and gratitude. For example, we talk about spirituality. Okay, so people have different religious beliefs or, maybe lack thereof, that's fine. But whether people are religious or not, the spiritual aspect is being at peace, that we're trying to get to is being at peace with oneself, right? So maybe everybody agree. Not everybody may agree, that their understanding of a deity exists, right, or God. But everyone agrees that nature exists. So maybe for one person, their spiritual center point, right, is going to some kind of place of worship with family, and that makes them feel a certain way. Or for another person, they say, well, I'm not really a churchgoer or whatever else, but at the same time, I feel my safe place and my harmonious place is with my significant other and among nature. Maybe people are doing something like, right, they're going ahead and they're feeding ducks, or they're bird watching, feeding ducks in a pond, bird watching, whatever. So that might be their spiritual harmonious place. And I think that that's why the spiritual aspect of things is so important for someone to identify. Number one, it makes us happier. It gives us a belief system, but it also goes ahead and it counters many of our innate instincts, or kind of like historically conditioned or programmed instincts, to go ahead and compete and to one up each other and sometimes in the process harm one another, right?
Very well said. Yep. In fact, there are people that have, for example, gone to affluent schools and all things considered. Everyone's on an equal playing ground, but yet there's still the need for somebody to one-up somebody else. And that's kind of, I guess, what we're trying to get to the bottom of, trying to, I guess, reverse engineer why this exists so we can try and help people understand how to get out of it.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. I think that a lot of that comes with the inner peace that we're looking for, and that's a good way to go ahead, even a practical way, spiritual and a practical way, to counteract or to go against the playground phenomenon, is to find that. So, for example, you and I might go ahead and say, however many years ago we were going out and playing basketball with each other. Of course, we're playing in the schoolyard, and we want to go ahead and if we're playing against each other, we want to go ahead and beat each other in a casual game of basketball, which is okay. That's understandable. It's fine. It's natural. Competition, again, to some degree, is a healthy thing. But I think that if either one of us was offered the opportunity to be the sixth man for, like we talked about, the late 80s or 1990s Chicago Bulls, right? and somebody told us, hey, the only kind of place that you're ever going to be able to shine on a basketball court for real is to go ahead and to be a player coming off the bench for the Chicago Bulls that are led by Michael Jordan. If somebody told you that's something that you could go ahead and that would be the the entirety of your basketball career or the entirety of your basketball legacy, right? I mean, for me personally, I can't answer for somebody else, but if somebody told me that and say, hey, you know what? I was nowhere near making the NBA to begin with, so if my only chance to play on the same court with Michael Jordan is coming in off the bench and not being envious of anybody else's position, I would certainly accept that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. I know that's the direction you were going, but when you said sixth man, I thought about an interview, I forget who it was, but somebody who had played against the Chicago Bulls, and they mentioned that when you played against any other team, it was a 5-on-5 game. But when you played against the Bulls in the 90s, it was a 5-against-6 game, and the sixth man was Phil Jackson.
There you go.
That kind of alludes to, what is missing on our playgrounds, both at school and workplace or anywhere else that humans organize. There is the absence of mentorship, the absence of a playground monitor, kind of like in our last episode, someone to help people navigate, someone to help people understand what's going on, and kind of be a coach, and so that absent that, people, I guess, are kind of fighting a futile battle of who's better than somebody else.
Absolutely. Mentorship is very important, spirituality, being at peace with one's place, and I think that's one of the things that you've figured out and has made you successful as a soccer coach or a football coach, as they call it in Europe or other parts of the world, and you're a basketball coach as well, is that you've been able to go ahead and kind of, I think, like tap into the different personalities of people on your team, on your teams, what kind of role they could play, how they could thrive, and have everybody come together with an acceptance of those roles, and that's made those teams successful. Now, I don't think that you ever purposely tried to stop somebody, like one of your really good midfielders, for example, for being scoring or that kind of thing. But at the same time, I think it seems like they kind of got a general acceptance of the role that, hey, they're going to score some goals too, but their general role is going to be to go ahead and move the ball through the midfield, make some good defensive plays, and let's say pass the ball up to your strikers, to your offensive players, or to your wings, and that kind of the general flow of the game was going to work really well. Like, for example, in hockey, most defensemen in hockey don't score a whole lot, but when they do score, it's a big deal. In general, they're going to go ahead and make a lot of passes and a lot of plays that are going to open up plays for the offensive players. So I think the acceptance of those roles and really kind of tapping into and probing what makes the team tick and what makes the individual people tick, and that harmony and balance and the team outings and everything that you've done. I think I've seen you be like very successful with that, and finding that harmony, that balance, and that level of acceptance that is kind of like, at least, if not eliminated the playground in your coaching environments, at least we can say that it's taken the edge off of it, where the level of competition amongst your players is healthy and friendly more than it is in any way somebody trying to go ahead and harm somebody else or take advantage of them in any way.
Definitely. So I guess if we were to reverse engineer why playground rules exist, what would be the essence of it to you, as far as for our listener? How can they understand how they find themselves in the predicament they may be in?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. That's a loaded question, and that's a tough question to answer. So if we think about it, so we're talking about kind of here like an inversion, right? Or kind of like if the roles were reversed. You're saying how we would feel about that? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that in essence, it comes back to acceptance is kind of what I'm thinking. And acceptance of ourselves, acceptance of others. So let's say, for example, in a workplace, I'm in a, right now I report to somebody, but let's say, for example, if it was the other way around, where I was a manager and somebody else reported to me, right? I accept my role, that I take some degree of responsibility, large degree of responsibility for how the team does. I also understand that not only are the people who report to me not always going to meet my expectations 100% of the time, I'm also not going to meet my own expectations, or I'm not going to meet their expectations. So with that level of humility and acceptance, I think that I could say, hey, you know what? The people that are reporting to me, maybe they're not always doing perfect work, but I'm not doing perfect work as their manager either. So let's go ahead and let's find a way, rather than me making them feel bad about themselves or exerting my authority over them, or my position of advantage over them. Let's find a way with everybody in the role. Let's try to find a way to make it tick. Let's find a way to make it work. And I would tell them, hey guys, if you guys ever feel I'm harsh or unfair, please do me a favor and call me out on it. That kind of makes them feel like we can balance the scales between us. And to my current manager's credit, he said that to me once. He's like, Mark, I have a tendency sometimes to interrupt people. I have a tendency to sometimes come across as kind of rude. If that ever happens, if you ever feel that happens, I just get passionate and I get kind of in the moment. If that ever happens, call me out on it. Feel free to call me out on it. Now, I haven't really called him out on it to this point, but just the fact that he says that shows me that he has a certain degree humility of acceptance of his role, acceptance, maybe appreciation of my role. At least he's trying. I can give him credit. That's better than most, if not all, my employers have done to this point. So I think that's what it is. I think that you can balance the scales between people with that level of acceptance, mutual accountability, understanding that we're all in this together and we all have different roles that have been defined for us or that we've defined for ourselves, and not think that somebody's more important than somebody else. If we can kind of instill that mentality into ourselves, kind of like the defenseman is as important as the striker, the midfielder is as important as the goalie. They just have different roles and different opportunities, then we'll do really well. And I have another actually thought about this, but I want to hear your response to that. What do you think about that? And I've got kind of like an additional thought that I want to share about this as well.
Cool. What do I think about what exactly?
So more about what you asked about, kind of like the reverse engineering of the whole thing, right? Or the role reversal. In terms of acceptance, how does that speak to you, like as a coach, or how does that speak to you? As an employee, or anything else that you're involved in?
So I typed in Google, why do people bully each other? And here is the findings of that search. Some people who bully may enjoy getting their own way. Others may like conflict and aggression. Some may be thoughtless rather than deliberately hurtful. Some may have difficulties with health, schoolwork, and self-esteem. So that's kind of alluding to what you talked about, that, maybe some people just act this way by default, in the absence of mentorship, in the absence of, I guess, somebody coaching people to be aware of their actions. They're just acting in a default mode. I think a lot of what happens in the playground is kind of that default interaction of people just trying to exercise power plays against each other to try and shine or outshine each other. So I think probably the first part to understand why things happen the way they do on the playground is to be conscious of what you're doing. And a lot of people are not conscious of what they're doing.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Now, what ends up happening is that you get even like, and I don't know if this is more when we talk about a sports situation, if I can allude to sports again briefly, if it's more of a fan thing or whatever it is, you have situations where they have MVPs, they have special awards, special honors to those players. Especially in professional sports, like I kind of play those down like, oh yeah, well thanks for the MVP, but anybody else could have, on my team, we're a team, we could have all done this together and that kind of thing. That kind of thing seems to, on some level though, those kinds of trophies, especially before people become polished professionals or really gain a sense of humility, seems to somehow give people an incentive, maybe not in a good way, or especially young people, to outshine people on their own team. Like, well, hey, our team went ahead and we got second place this year. We didn't win the championship, but I won the MVP award, right? Is that sending the wrong message in your opinion? What do you think about MVP awards or individual accolades in the context of a team?
Well, I guess if the coach has done a good job of explaining to his players their individual value, then most valuable player needs to be kind of specific to a certain function. Like most valuable defensive player, most valuable offensive player, most valuable midfield. But to go ahead and blanket statement most valuable player, to your point, could give the wrong impression.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting is this. We talk about, with the professional sports, one thing that I like this year, and again, this is probably partially because the person I'm about to speak of is a professional, a polished professional. So, in this year's Stanley Cup Finals, in the National Hockey League, it was the Florida Panthers against the Edmonton Oilers. The Florida Panthers won in 7 games. The MVP of the tournament was chosen to be not for the first time in many years, decades actually, not a player from the winning team actually. It was actually a player from the losing team. So the Florida Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers, but the MVP trophy was awarded to Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers. Now here are the Florida Panthers out on the ice as a team celebrating the Stanley Cup. Connor McDavid has been awarded the MVP trophy, but he does not come out on the ice to get the trophy. That is, right there, a testament to the team value. Yes, of course he's going to get the trophy later, but he doesn't want to go ahead and go out onto the ice to receive an award for a personal accolade while his team is, number one, disappointed that they didn't win the championship, but while another team is celebrating their own trophy as a team. So he's not going to celebrate as a member of the losing team a trophy as an individual while the other team is celebrating their trophy, the winning championship trophy, as a team. Now again, is that humility? Is that polish? Is that good judgment? Maybe a combination of all of those things? Perhaps. I just found that very interesting to see that the guy who is was awarded the MVP, was part of the losing team, but he did not come out on the ice to accept this trophy. I think that speaks volumes to him about the value of winning a championships, or to other people about the value of winning a championship, and to the value, or to him, the value of his own team. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's probably to your point, more polish than anything else.
Yep.
And a lot of people on the playground don't have that polish, and they don't have any guidance to let them know, what really is the hallmark of a successful person. So they pretty much are the misguided notion of whatever they see on Facebook or Instagram or, whatever the social media that they like to look at. And so it's that absence of leadership, that absence of coaching to help them be polished on the playground to realize that, they may not be as special or stand out as they think they are. It's kind of like they're under a false guise of what it means to be a champion.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing, though. I think that to go ahead, we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but that's okay. I think that for somebody to be proud of a personal accolade, like best goaltender, right, in soccer, or best goaltender in hockey, is okay. But there's a time and a place to celebrate that. I think that if somebody has gone ahead and their team is lost, and they've been awarded that trophy as an individual, maybe to go ahead and celebrate that individual accolade at the time the team is lost, or the team is experiencing some level of sorrow or grief or disappointment because they lost, it's not appropriate to go ahead and celebrate their own kind of thing, or their own kind of personal accolade. But I think at the same time, I think that if, let's say, one member of your team would go ahead and get a trophy, let's say, for being the best goalkeeper, being the best scorer, being the MVP of the tournaments, and they put that on their trophy shelf or in their trophy case, that's a level of personal acknowledgement, right, for their own personal contributions to the team, to the sport, etc. I think it's still okay to celebrate about individual accolades, right? But I think there's probably a time and a place for it.
Yeah, so that begs the question, how would playgrounds in general and at large be different if there was the mentor, the hall monitor, the playground monitor that would help people realize that they need to work together more than try and outshine each other?
Exactly.
How would that make the playground rules different?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The working together concept, and you've stressed that all along, and you've never wavered from that, and you believe in that as a human being. You believe in that, and as a coach, you've even collaborating with you on a musical level and that kind of thing, and those types of projects, creative projects. You've always had a team mentality, and you've never wavered from that. And I've always appreciated that about you, and because you have plenty of individual talent, which you're of course very humble about, but in the creative realm and the realm of sports and any number of realms. But the thing is, you've always been humble about that, and appreciated that, I think. But at the same time, you've been trying to figure out, how do we get the moving parts to work together, right? How do we get the team working together? How do we get the team to succeed as a unit? And I think that you, like I said, you never wavered from that. That's part of your value system, and I really appreciate that about you. But to your point, or to my point from earlier, and this is the reason why we're talking, we went off on a tangent, I think largely about sports, is I still believe, and again, I could be wrong, because I'm just the opinion of one person, that at the heart of the playground phenomenon, from the beginnings of time, right? The types of governments that existed in Egypt, the Greek and Roman democracies, right? In those early city-states. Competition, what we're feeling and what we're experiencing in places like America or Europe. Competition is very much at the forefront of human existence, even when it doesn't need to be. Even if there's a sufficient amount of resources for everybody in a certain realm, or people aren't hungry, or people have a car to drive, right? Or people have a loving mating partner, any number of things, we'll still find a way to compete with each other. And competition is a good thing. It's a healthy thing in many ways. But if it's not channeled correctly, like many things, right, and not in a certain amount of moderation, it can go ahead and it can have very, very adverse effects. Look at the political landscapes, the social political landscapes in the world right now. Doesn't matter what side you're on. I'm not even saying that I'm even taking a side. I'm just saying, look at how people are upset with each other. Look at what they'll do to go ahead and gain the slightest edge over each other, to cut each other down. It's gotten to a point where it's toxic, it's unhealthy. And with that happening in the adult world, it trickles down to our schools. It trickles down to our special interest groups. It trickles down to our homes. That's the point of this program. That is our purpose here. This concept that Eric has authored, and I've been happy to participate in and helped him to spread the message, is that until we understand the detriments, the damage that the playground rules phenomenon is causing, and it enters into our collective consciousness, we are going to be continuing to be victimized by it. Even the people who right now think that they're benefiting from it, as the old saying goes, there's always a bigger fish. You may benefit from it now, but there's going to be somebody who's going to come back and get you later. It's okay to have a level of competition. We're never going to be perfect as human beings. We're not always going to hold hands and hug trees, right? But at the same time, through love, through understanding, through acceptance, through spirituality. Again, spirituality doesn't have to be in a place of worship. Spirituality can be somewhere else. Through those kinds of things, finding a way to work together. Understanding that we're all in this together in so many different ways. We're all we've all been born, we're all going to experience a certain type of life, and we're all going to leave this earth at some point, right? So with that understanding, we can be much more accepting, patient, understand we're in the same boat, and we can try to stop cutting each other down at every turn. I think that's what's important. We don't need to cut each other down at every turn. We can go ahead and we can focus on problems, solutions, and harmony between each other and within ourselves. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, definitely. Like in a professional setting, you could almost see maybe a tactical benefit or strategy to Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen undercutting Stockton or Malone, trying to get in their head, trying to get them to underperform. But really, what's the point of any of that on the actual playground day to day? You cutting somebody else down, although it makes you feel good about yourself in the moment, what does it accomplish? It doesn't accomplish anything other than making an enemy for yourself. So again, I think people are misguided. They do that thinking that there's going to be a benefit, but end up, kind of picking battles that really have no dividends. And so, yeah, I agree with you full-heartedly that the purpose of our show is to kind of show people that the battles that are being waged on the playground are kind of pointless battles. And all they're doing is creating enemies for yourself. And it's not helping you at all. And, we talked about this the other night off the air, a lot of the cool kids that were ruthless on the playground at school are nobodies today, So that's just a case in point. There's really no benefit to being mean to your fellow man or woman on the playground.
There is no benefit. Long from it all, in the end, somebody might feel like they're going to go ahead and that they're going to be successful as a playground bully, and that they may see some benefits from that short term, but then it may be their kids, their next of kin, right, who are being bullied later, 20 years later, 25 years later, 30 years later, and being like, oh, wait, what did I do? This is the kind of environment that I created. It has to come from the mentors. I couldn't agree with you more. From the parents. It has to come from the people. And that's why I always say it's great that schools, and we've been talking about this, and that's why I'm hoping that this phenomenon at some point enters in, teaching about this phenomenon, enters the educational system. Because what do we do when we learn? We will learn all the basic subjects, right? We have languages, we have math, right, and science, and all different types of stuff. But in the social realm, right, the social political realm, any number of ways that you can look at this, because it affects everything. It's even secondary where this ends up even being classified. I think it's important that that people, especially young people, are educated about this kind of thing, because it will eventually enter the collective consciousness. It will make future generations better. They'll understand it better. They'll experience it more firsthand. There will be talk groups. There will be places in the classroom to discuss these things. That's not going to happen overnight. People might go ahead and lock horns. It might trigger people. It may cause some anger, especially young people. But at the end of the day, they're going to have a place to express themselves. And I'm hoping the playground bully will think to themselves, you know what, maybe I should go ahead and refrain from giving this guy a hard time next time around, right? Or even some other people in between, like we talk about the liaisons, right? Like, well, by standing back or by facilitating this, right, what am I really doing? I'm really an enabler of this. It could affect me, not only myself, but it could affect my loved ones too down the road. Every single person has to understand in this chain that they have something to lose. Nobody is immune from it. Nobody is immune from being harmed by the playground rules phenomenon. And I really hope that we continue to go ahead and educate people, continue to go ahead and understand how important it is that we accept that this type of phenomenon exists, and therefore we will continue to go ahead and do this work and spread the word. Eric, final thoughts.
You beat me to the punch. I was just about to ask you what your final thoughts were as you were giving them. Yeah. So, I couldn't agree more, 100%. I guess the more people realize that everybody's trying to accomplish something, and that the person next to you, I heard a professor one day say that you need to be nice to everybody because you don't know who's going to be in what position tomorrow. And that's kind of, again, with the absence of mentors and leaders and coaches and teachers on the playground, I guess people are missing that point. And so people are treating others as if they're always going to be in that position of, I'm over you and you're under me. But you never know, that may change tomorrow. And while you want to be sincere and genuine, you don't want to treat somebody nicely just because they may be above you tomorrow. You actually genuinely want to treat them nice because that's the right thing to do. So hopefully, as people hear this podcast more and more, and, they start to engage, start to comment, start to leave posts, start to subscribe, and be part of the conversation. A big issue we have in this phenomenon is that nobody's partaking in the conversation. And so the victims are, sitting in silence, and the people that are bullying obviously, feel no need to be part of the conversation. But it's probably never going to get better until we all become part of this conversation. So that my parting thoughts would be the invitation to everybody listening to this podcast that they would decide to be more proactive and try to make the environment a better place for everybody.
Absolutely. And before I share my final thoughts, something that you just said gave me an idea. I asked several people in regards to our podcasts, which are still relatively new, and I asked, okay, so what is it that you like the most about what we're doing? We're always looking for feedback, or something that you felt like you connected with, didn't connect with, that kind of thing. I think that several people I spoke with who enjoyed the podcast, when I asked them in several situations, like, hey, is there something that you felt like? Is there something you felt like about the podcast that you did, that maybe you did not connect with? And specifically that question. And several people came back and said, well, it's unfortunate to hear about other people who've experienced this, but I didn't feel necessarily connected to it personally because I've never been bullied. And I've never been victimized by the playground in the way that you guys are talking about it. Now, see, I would go ahead, and I'll lead this into my final thoughts. I would go ahead and I would challenge that point. I think that what we've been saying all along is everyone's been victimized by it. Everyone, at some point in their lives, has been victimized by it. Maybe not in the way that came across as conventional bullying, but they've been overlooked for promotion. They've been people have made assumptions about them and cut them down verbally, in person, or in a remote environment on social media, any number of things, because again, they assume something about them, or they want to gain leverage over them. Every single person, I'm saying this again, has been affected by the playground in one way or another, and most of them, if not all, have been affected inevitably adversely at some point. So with that in mind, understanding that this kind of thing has existed since the dawn of mankind, I think the next big thing for us as a civilization, as society, in a broader scale civilization, as humanity, is to go ahead and to accept that we are all part of this phenomenon. We've all played different roles at different times during this phenomenon, and that the next step for us is to overcome this phenomenon. It's not going to happen overnight, but we keep on reminding people about it, setting examples of it, and teaching our children about it. We'll teach their children. We'll teach their children after that, and we'll all be happier for it. We'll all be better off for it.
Exactly. So click, subscribe, and be a part of the conversation.
That's right. Don't forget to like us, and we appreciate all of you, and we'll look forward to your comments and to your feedback, and we'll see you next time. Take care.